Tune in to the Red, White, and Blue Show, where David, Martin, and Nick will blow your mind talking religion, politics, and money too. It's a talk show that's always in prime time. With their unique perspectives and in-depth analysis, they'll keep you informed on the latest news. So join the conversation on the Red, White, and Blue Show with David, Martin, and Nick. Your go-to views.
Red, White and Blue shows myself, David Holden, Nick Smith and Marty Costello every single week at every Wednesday, 7 p.m, talking to you live via Twitter Spaces. Tonight we have a very special guest. David Vance is joining us and he'll be joining in the banter and the topics we take you through. Right, lads, first thing on the cards we want to talk about is free speech. Free speech, as we know, it's been under attack for a while now by all these communists. They've been put into all these positions. They're banning people left, right, and centre from social media. You name it, everyone's getting cancelled. Who better to know about cancellation than David Vance?
Yeah.
Well, and as I said myself, I'm currently on a ban as well. So yeah, David, whilst we've got you on, we'll start off with you. Congratulations, it's good to have you back. It's good to see you back on Twitter.
Yeah. Thanks. Well, do you know the weirdest thing of all? I was banned from Twitter by left-wing media hordes back in September 2020, and I have reason to believe that further to the news that came out at the weekend there about the 77th Brigade monitoring people. I think back in September 2020, the government were monitoring people who were vocally against lockdown, masks, everything, and I was one of those. So I think that was part of the reason for being banned. But anyway, long story short, lo and behold, November of 2022, just gone by, I got an email saying, "Oh, we made a mistake. You shouldn't have been banned, and you're back." And so I was, and it's just as simple as that. I didn't ask to come back. I was told I was back, and so here I am. So what can I say? I mean, I do believe that we should take every forum we can get to put forward our views, and if that means places like Twitter, we should take advantage of it.
Totally. Sounds like an honest mistake to me, David.
Well, totally honest mistake. Yeah, I mean, 2 years and it sounds like a song, doesn't it? 2 years and 2 months since I went away, and it sounds like you sang that one. And nothing compares to you. There's a line in that sounds a bit like that. But yeah, so I mean, obviously, there's still problems here on Twitter because Tommy Robinson's been taken down for I think the second time. I believe.
Yes.
So that's not good. I do believe in free speech, and what you're saying is right, guys. Free speech lies at the heart of having just a functioning society. If you ain't got free speech, you've got controlled tyranny and authoritarianism. So therefore, it's I hate to see anybody being banned, left, right, centre. It doesn't matter as long as people are reasonably civil and don't engage in criminality. They should be allowed to speak.
Well said, David. Free speech is a cornerstone of democracy. Nick, I know you wanted to touch on Tommy Robinson being banned again.
It's funny. It's funny. David just brought that up actually because I wanted to mention on TR being banned, and not just him, but other people being shadow banned. And I just wanted to ask David Vance and listeners listening in, what are your thoughts on since Elon took over? Do you think it's going the right way? Do you think we were fooled into thinking maybe we're allowed to have our free speech platform? What's your thoughts, David, and listeners?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question. Like, I do think, I'm going to give Elon Musk the benefit of the doubt. I mean, look, there's lots of issues I might have with him in other areas, but as regards Twitter, I've been able to say pretty much what I want since I came back. I haven't really haven't pulled any punches. I don't shy away from anything in particular. I think I think Elon Musk's probably himself, as regards free speech, he's broadly speaking okay. One of the big problems we've got, guys, and not everyone understands this, but Twitter Europe is headquartered in Dublin, right, in Ireland. That's the European headquarters, and that is a very, very woke headquarters. And I believe that whilst a lot of people were sacked in Silicon Valley, not so many people were sacked in Dublin. And that's a problem for people in the UK as much as people in Ireland. So I think people need to understand that background. A lot of the wokerati, the people who torture us by taking us down, shadow banning us, all that stuff, I think I do think that still goes on because they haven't been dismissed yet, but I hope they will be.
Yeah, definitely.
We can only hope, can't we?
Well, exactly. Yeah. Although hope makes a good breakfast, but a poor supper.
Yeah. I say that's quite interesting, David. You mentioned about the 77th Brigade because around that time as well, I had quite a large Facebook page where I spoke against the narrative, and lo and behold, I got banned and had my page removed for questioning the narrative. It's quite frightening, I think, having the British Army going against the people. I'd like to ask you, actually, David, what you think about this movement, the 77th Brigade.
You know something, Martin? It's absolutely shocking that our government uses our military to actually police our free speech. I'd like to see the military deployed in the middle of the channel, protecting our country from a tsunami of illegality. But instead, what are they doing? Well, they're on Facebook, they're on Twitters, they're everywhere, trying to sort of, because from what I understand, they do, and I have talked about this for quite a wee while. I think what they've been doing since 2020 for definite is monitoring conversations, possibly like this one, and compiling lists of individuals to be targeted by social media companies for being taken down. And the biggest irony I find of all, the thing that staggers me is like, people want to check this out. You can, check it out on the interzooms. But 77th Brigade is part of the British Army. It's legit. It's supposed to be dealing with our enemies overseas. It deals with those. We're the enemy, and we're the people at home, and we're the patriots. And the second thing is this, which also is a very difficult one to understand. Mr. Tobias Elwood, who of course is a Conservative MP, is a volunteer within the 77th. So technically speaking, an MP, could be spying on his own constituents.
Wow.
What do you mean? What can we make of this? The 77th should be radically reconfigured. Leave us alone. Look after threats outside of the UK. The patriots in this country are not a threat. I don't think, anyway.
Hear, hear.
It's it's very dangerous slope that we're on at the moment, I think, isn't it, David? We're heading into a territory now where we're literally becoming an autocratic society. What to think, what to feel. It's like we're heading into communist social. I was about to get my teeth back in into like a socialist government. You wouldn't think with the Conservatives were in power.
Well, the thing is, I mean, again, like, my view is that we don't have a Conservative government. We've got an authoritarian cabal, and I don't see any difference between Conservatives and Labour. It's a uni party, different shades, maybe different emphasis, but it's a uni party, and the Conservatives have as little interest in our freedom and liberty as those. Those in the Labour Party. So I actually see people like Keir Starmer as the same. I mean, people like Jeremy Hunt, he could be in Keir Starmer's government. Keir Starmer could be in Rishi Sunak's cabinet. This is what I was saying. I was at an event at the weekend, and I was just saying, like, and this is where I've moved. I mean, my position, I mean, I guess some of you guys have known me for a while. I would have seen myself prior to COVID as a small C conservative libertarian type, so not overly invested in any particular party, but certainly very, very anti-Labour and all of that, and socialists and the Marxists and all that. But I've now revised my opinion, only insofar as I think the Conservatives are not conservatives. I've got big questions about all the political parties, and again, some people mightn't like this, but I'll say it. I've got big questions against what I see as controlled opposition amongst some of the ranks of the smaller parties, and in particular regard, Mr. Richard Tice of the Reform Party.
Yes, definitely, 100%.
Oh, good, good. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, because I'm never sure when people are going to respond to that. See, here, look, honestly, here's the thing, and I'm sure everyone listening to this and everyone who will listen to this, there's lots of good people in this country who I think, with a small c, are conservative minded. They want liberty, freedom. They want their borders reinforced. They want to live their lives, right? And those people would have maybe voted conservative with the big C, and they feel completely betrayed, absolutely betrayed. And so, like, as we saw over the UKIP years, so they're flocking towards, I guess, the Reform Party. So I have a lot of respect for the people within the Reform Party, because a lot of them are ex-UKIPers and all that, right? But my problem is, what I talk about is the Judas Goat leadership. The Judas Goat leadership in the form of Richard Tice and Dr. David Bull. Those guys, 100% were in favour of removing our bodily autonomy. So they're 100% in favour of, oh yeah, we got to go into Ukraine and support Zelensky. These people are Judas Goats, in my view anyway. And they're going to lead people astray, because they're not genuine, even if the Reform Party members are. So I don't know what you guys think about it, but that's where I am anyway.
No, I personally totally agree, David. We all know now that there's no difference between Tory and Labour, which is quite upsetting, because there was a massive difference between them for the last few decades. Which is why now it's more than ever to have a new party involved. No more of the, I'm going to vote for this party because my granddad did and my grand did. No more of this. We need a new party to come forward. I'm glad you mentioned Reform, because so many people. I'm going to be biased because obviously I'm a Heritage Party supporter. So I just think that Richard Tice, Reform Party, what he's done, cozying up with Matt Hancock, having pictures, laughing with him, still continues to share the stories about a certain thing that's happened over the last 2 years. I don't want to mention a certain name because otherwise we get kicked off. I just think it's now more than ever that a new party's needed. Labour and Tory are just the same cheek or the same arse. So you're right on every aspect there, David.
See, the thing is, Nick, I think that the real danger, the thing that I never thought I would think, is what I now do think. I think, for example, at the moment, this so-called Conservative Party is actually setting things up for Labour. I think they're making such a mess of everything. They're destroying so much, with their crazy high tax policies and all the rest of it, that's going to guarantee Labour in 2024. And so I now look upon this sort of so-called Conservative Party and Labour as they are this. They're not only are they the same, but they kind of work in each other's interests. So I know there's millions of Conservative voters who are probably decent enough people, but they need to waken up. You know what I mean? They're being betrayed, literally from within their own party. Look at what happened over, look at Andrew Bridgen, the only person that stood up in the Commons to talk about what. And what did the Conservatives do? They they threw him out. And what did Reform do? Richard Tice said, well, we wouldn't have him. So that's all you need to know about these Judas Goats in Reform, leading Reform anyway. And but it saddens me because again, there's loads and loads of proper, decent British patriot people, and they do need to coalesce. And whether it's around the Heritage Party or whatever, I mean, I'm flexible in all of that, but we need to have genuine a genuine place to go, and that's what's gone missing. But who knows? Maybe this will work out well, because maybe I want to see the Conservative Party, metaphorically speaking, burnt to the ground electorally, and they will, like they will be there. I mean, did you see the what's it, the even in the blue wall seats, they're so-called heartland, Labour's 10% up. And again, so they're going to be burnt down. It's good. It'll be good to see it. It's going to be horrific to cope with Stormer and Angela Reyna and all the rest of them. But we'll handle it. And hopefully, again, it'll bring about a coalescence of patriots in a different way. And that's what I hope.
I think one thing like you said, I think you made a good point there actually about the Conservatives destroying things to set up the next Labour government. But once again, we don't have to look too far to see another common denominator, the World Economic Forum. You got Richie Sunak a part of it, and many members of the cabinet, and of course Keir Starmer ready to go in. I think, I would like to ask you, David, about the World Economic Forum. But I was going to go back to another point beforehand, and that was about reform, about Richard Tice and Dr. David Ball. And I think, you're quite right to talk about a potential there of some sort of control when we look at how he shot himself in the foot twice, not only with the Andrew Bridgen fiasco, but again, wanting to back the Ukraine debacle. So interesting point there. But what do you think about the World Economic Forum and their influence, not only here but across the globe?
Well, it's a really good question, Martin. I mean, the WEF. I mean, Klaus Schwab, Mr. Klaus Schwab, and his friends. They are a major global. I mean, they're a bigger threat than global warming, aren't they? As far as I can see, I do think that people like the Sunak, pretty much the entire Conservative Party, the leaders anyway within it, and within Labour, they're all signed up, signed, sealed, and delivered to the WEF. And furthermore, Sir Keir Starmer is a member of the Trilateral Commission, the EU part of that. And if you look up Trilateral Commission, they're just another part of what I see as a globalist cabal. And this then brings us to the real point that the people that posture as British politicians, they're not. None of them are. None of the major parties. They are simply delivery boys for the likes of the WEF, the likes of the UN, the likes of these supranational anti-sovereign nation organizations. So that's why none of them are worth voting for, and so it's not worth getting excited about. Oh, the Tories are going to lose 100 seats. Good. And Labour's going to gain 100 seats. Well, I don't care, because there's no difference. That's the point. That's we need to break out of this mindset of red and blue and start thinking more creatively in terms of, as we're talking about, other political parties, or helping create movements, or whatever it is that get us into a much better position to oppose what I guess a lot of us would see as the continued betrayal of everything that matters in our country.
You're spot on there, Dave. And I think, sadly, what's going to have to happen is it will take having Labour in power for another 5 years before people really, wake up as to what's going on. It goes back to that old saying, doesn't it? Good times create weak men, and hard times create like strong men, or something along those lines. I think that's what's going to have to happen.
I think you're right. Yeah. I mean, does anybody think that, like, 5 years of Labour, can you just imagine the amount of damage? But there's another point I wanted to make, actually. I wonder what you guys think. So, see the other thing in all of the, if you look at the big overarching political thing, back in 2016, we did something as a country that they did not want and they did not expect. We voted to leave the rotten European Union. Right? Brexit was never supposed to have happened. As you know, Cameron was bunched into it by the rise of UKIP and all that. So it wasn't supposed to happen. So I believe that, Boris delivered us Brexit in 2019. No, he didn't, because Northern Ireland stayed within the single market, for example. But I think what they're doing is they're fighting a rearguard action. and you're going to see that becoming a big feature in 24 when Starmer does get in, because you're going to see them starting to shimmy up to the European Union in the interest of economic growth. You're going to see moves that they mightn't be bold enough to bring us straight back into the single market, but they want to do that. So again, this is where my contempt for the Tories. The Tories are working hand in glove with Labour to bring us back towards the European Union, which we, the British people, said, no, we don't want to be part of this. I wonder, so by 2029, I fear that we will be very close to being subsumed back into the EU. I wonder what you guys think.
Totally agree on that, David.
Yeah, definitely.
You can't argue with that. That's spot on. I think they've been putting out polls recently. Have you seen these polls? Because they're saying now that more people are in favour of rejoining the EU. They say Brexit hasn't worked. I mean, we haven't had Brexit; it hasn't been delivered. If you remember the former leader of UKIP, Gerard Batten, he was saying, the way to leave the European Union would be to repeal the 1972 European Communities Act. Then we've left under our law, and then we're not tied in to any laws or any legislation whatsoever with the EU. We've seen recently European Court of Human Rights, EU Commission. We're still tied in. They've left us tied in for a reason. I think you're spot on. They're going to take us back and it's easier because we're left. Well,
yeah. And you see, I've got a personal kind of interest in this because I think the reason that Boris Johnson kept Northern Ireland in the single market and subject to the European Court of Justice rulings was, as it were, that's a potential backdoor for the rest of the UK to eventually go back in. You see, I think these things are done deliberate. I don't believe in coincidence anymore. So I kind of feel that you've got the border up the Irish Sea. Well, how could they solve that border up the Irish Sea? Well, dead simple. Put us back into the single market. No more problem. And so that's why, I mean, they're all contemptible, from Johnson through Sunak through to Starmer. They're in diametrical opposition to what all those millions of Brexit voters voted for. And then the other mendacious aspect is they didn't. I mean, nobody believes that Brexit's been delivered in any regard because they didn't want to. Totally sovereign Britain. Like, for example, the whole thing over Ukraine, such a cringy embarrassment. We should have told them to get lost. If they want to have adventures in Ukraine, go and have your adventure in Ukraine. Instead, the British government, and Boris, I mean, he's virtually living with Zelensky as far as I could see. It's almost like a bromance, isn't it? So
it is. Yeah.
It's embarrassing.
Really, and they'll be waving rainbow flags and going on Wendy walks together soon.
But as I say, so I think the big picture on this is the British people wanted to leave. The British establishment didn't want us to leave, and therefore, I believe that they are working assiduously to bring us back in, and they'll frame it differently. They'll say, "Oh, we're going for economic growth. We need to work with our neighbours." They'll talk about all this kind of stuff, but ultimately, let's be clear: they want us back. Northern Ireland never left, so that's why I really object when people say, like, people were celebrating 3 years from the Brexit being delivered. Was it yesterday? And it annoys me because I never left, and I'm British citizen. I really object to that, but it was done deliberately.
None of us did leave. It was Brexit. We spoke about this before. It's final Brexit in name only. Yeah. That's all it is. Just want to touch on the next topic. I know, Nick, you wanted to talk about, you were saying something about Putin and Russian citizens in Ukraine. We've seen, the last couple of days, Guy Volstad, he's come out, basically said that Russia would never have invaded Ukraine if it wasn't for Brexit. And Nick, I know you wanted to touch
ridiculous
on the Ukraine-Russia thing. So take it away, mate.
When people talk about this so-called war conflict, I automatically tell them, well, it's a funny old war and conflict where you got every journalist, every Tom, Dick and Abdul, singers and actors, including Ellie Goulding, a Z-list singer from the UK, going over there. You got Sean Penn going over there, cringe. You got Zelensky handing out awards, hosting awards, doing a Vogue photo shoot. Who does a Vogue photo shoot when your country is at war and you're apparently saying that you might not never exist again? Who does a Vogue photo shoot? Look, Putin's done a statement and a latest speech where he talks in detail about this, where he's saying that he's protecting what he says is pro-Russian people on the eastern side and the southern side who have been targeted for the last 10 to 12 years on a massive scale. So yeah, it makes me laugh. You got Boris Johnson. Does everyone remember Boris Johnson? He was our prime minister once upon a time. He's still going over there and trying to encourage Ukraine to join NATO. We've got Sweden and Finland who are desperate to join NATO. I mean, how big is NATO really thinking they're going to be, and what's it going to achieve? Now, could I just remind? Sorry, so just before you get in there, David, could I just remind people that Gorbachev and Ronald Reagan said in 1980 something that they agreed that NATO would not push eastwards. Since then, NATO have adopted 13 countries. So it's like having a rival or an enemy at the end of your road, then becoming best friends with your next door neighbour. You've got to protect yourself. I think this is what it is. And I think there's a lot of corruption in Ukraine. Let's not beat around the bush. It's like a Nazi-fied influence happening in Ukraine. And I just think we're getting onto this. We're encouraging World War III. And a shout out to Austria and Hungary, who have refused to send weapons to Ukraine because they want to de-escalate this proxy war. And we all should want that. I think it's inevitable that Russia will take parts that they want in the east and the south to protect their generations of Russian and pro-Russian separatists there. And I think a year or two from now, Zelensky will be living it up in a big mansion in LA and have a great forward career. So yeah, I just think it's a waste of time, a waste of money. It makes us like the big bad Russians, like a James Bond villain film. It's
Yeah, I mean, just can I come in a couple of things there? First of all, I believe NATO is the axis of evil, right?
Yes.
It's become. It wasn't always that, but it's become that. NATO should have folded up tent in 1990 when the Soviet Union fell. Instead, it's hung around like a bad smell, and it's gotten worse. And it basically seeks, I think, to be a nascent one world army, if you know what I mean. So they've provoked this with Putin, and I oppose war. I think war it's just such a waste of everything. But as you say, NATO broke commitments, as far as I can understand, by moving as close as it could to Russian borders.
Definitely.
So they did. There's no doubt about that. And as you say, Ukraine is, up until recently, it was the most corrupt country in the world before the corrupt British media instantly turned it into, like heaven on earth. So corrupt. Full of biolabs funded by the US administration. What were they doing in the biolabs? All kinds of monies being sort of funneled through Ukraine. But ultimately, the game is, can they get Putin to fall? This is the West and NATO. Can they bring Putin down? And then can they get BlackRock, Vanguard, and the rest of them to go into Russia and sort of gobble up all the mineral assets and all the rest of it. That's part of the geopolitical game. But the other thing is, I actually think NATO wants to ultimately have conflict with China as well, not possibly for maybe another year, 2 years. So NATO is such a menace, and we have to call it out.
Definitely.
So sorry, I'm just trying to make sure my phone battery doesn't die.
Can I just briefly remind people of the British media told the British people not to travel to Ukraine during a football tournament a few years ago because of the Nazified influence that Ukraine had. Then, fast forward just a couple of years, they're encouraging us to go over and help the Ukraine and this and that. So it's just bizarre situation.
Well, it is, and like we all know that the media were calling the Azov battalions, for example, they were calling them Nazis. It's a matter of journalistic record. So we are supporting a regime over there which is deeply corrupt, which is very unfortunate antecedents to the Nazis in World War II, and and the other thing is, though, for me, the biggest farce of all is the British media pretends that, oh, Zelensky's winning, pretty Putin's on the run. No, he's not. What we're seeing is the meat grinder in Donbass. We're seeing the loss of so many young Ukrainian lives, which I deeply lament and regret. What should have happened was diplomacy should have prevailed. There shouldn't have been any of this. I don't think Putin should have invaded, if I'm being really honest, but I also don't think he had any choice. So I accept that. But I do blame NATO, honestly. Again, something I wouldn't have said maybe 4 or 5 years ago. But you gotta, when the world changes, you have to change with it. And I take a view, well, like NATO is just such a malignant force. They're keeping this going. They don't want peace. They don't want to see the end of conflict. And unfortunately, if they could well trigger potentially not if not a World War III, a European war anyway. Let's put it like that. So that's why I've got such contempt for NATO.
Martin, what's your take on the Russia-Ukraine situation? I know we've seen lots of I think it was the UK Army General was saying that we have to face it. We'll be going to war with Russia. Well, that wasn't so long ago, was it?
No, it's an absolute disgrace, really. And I think what really annoys me most of all is, as a British taxpayer, we're seeing the elderly freezing in their homes, things like food banks and what have you on the rise, but they see it fit to sending more money out there into that big, massive money laundering operation. That's all it seems to be. And as Nick mentioned as well, Boris going out there. I mean, it's absolutely so cringy, isn't it? He's got no right being out there in the first place.
Boris, I've got to jump in there because you just reminded me. I asked my followers a while back. I said, if you could ask Boris Johnson any question, what would you ask him? And obviously there was thousands of replies, and I was scrolling through, and one it tickles me to this day every time I think about it. And this guy said, what he would ask Boris Johnson, what type of balloon do you use to brush your hair? Bloody brilliant. Right, guys, we want to touch on the black cops.
Yes, please, yes.
White supremacists, apparently. Take it away, Nick. Tell us about this story because you've been moved up on this one.
Yeah, please. Thank you for that, David, because this has really been bothering me, and it's a topic I really want to talk about. So, to David Polden, Martin, David Vance, and listeners, we're talking about Tyre Nichols, who was a black American civilian who was beaten savagely by 5 black police officers near his mother's home whilst he's pleading for his mum. As a result, he dies some days later. It's disgusting tragedy. Now, what's laughable, okay, is you've got the likes of Shola and other race-baiting activists saying this was inherited racism and or white supremacy. Now, let me just say this and repeat this again. A black American civilian was beaten and killed by 5 black police officers. How is that white supremacy? Now, rather than I've got a little monologue here. Rather than calling it what it is, which is thuggish police brutality. Yeah, thugs in uniform, nothing more, ladies and gentlemen. Now, there's countless videos of police brutality in the USA. Countless. No matter what the colour of the victim, or no matter what colour of the police officer. So this is police brutality as a whole. All right. For far too long, the culture of policing has been allowed for these police officers to really never be held accountable. They're never really being punished for their actions, which has really just fueled their behaviour in later terms, right? Even with them knowing, they know that they're on CCTV sometimes. They know that their body cam footage is live, and they still do what they do because the culture of American policing has allowed them to get away, most of them, to get away with anything they want, regardless, as I said, I must repeat, regardless the colour of the victim or the colour of the police officer. So, in my opinion, there needs to be a total overhaul of policing in the USA. 100%. It's not about colour. It's about police brutality. We've seen it time and time and time and time again.
Yeah, no, I agree, completely agree with that. I think, I mean, as you said, the race baiters that instantly jumped on this one. I put a thing out about, I'm sure you saw the New York mayor was suggesting that this was probably racism, even though it was an all black police squad attacking a black man and violently, and all of that. But the broader point is a good one. Well, there's two things I'd add actually. First of all, as far as I understand, the Scorpion Squad, which was the group of officers concerned, they were basically diversity hires. So to go back to the point, they hadn't been trained properly. They were not selecting the best people, giving them the right training. What they were doing is it's your typical diversity tick box
right.
exercise. But then
Yes.
here's the thing: you put these guys on the streets, which they have, and look what's happened. In terms of the gentleman losing his life. So yes, a complete lack of professionalism. But that's because professionalism is not as important as diversity and equity.
No,
So
you,
that's the
yes.
reality. Yeah, sorry.
You're quite right. For far too long, and it's increasing, people are being given their jobs solely because of their race, religion, or gender, not because of their skills, experience, and/or future potential. And this is where we are ending up.
Yep, I agree.
This is it. This is the left. That's what they do. Everything's racist, Nick. They have to put a racist spin on everything. Did you see the CNN headline? There was a CNN headline just after it happened, and it said something along the lines of, the police who killed, his name's Tyre Nicholas or something, was it?
Yes.
Something along they were black, but still might have been driven by racism. As soon as I see that, I spat my pint out with laughter. I couldn't believe it. The cheek of them, the cheek of them is unreal. It's astonishing.
It's lazy. It's lazy, desperate attempts. It's lazy, desperate attempts. Now, you haven't got to have a half a brain cell to know that this was in no way, shape, or form racist driven. Come on, please. Let's come on. Yeah, and we all know this here.
But it was diversity driven. It was lack of professionalism driven. But can I also say, and I wonder what you guys think. Like, we can talk about the states and everything you said, and I completely agree with. But can we really talk from a position, a superior position in the UK? Look at the absolute state of policing in the United Kingdom. Look at the sort of people who are amongst the police. We've got rapists in the police. And again, why is that? I would say for the same reason. It's to do with lack of professionalism. It's about maybe being afraid at the interview process to ask the right questions. You cannot have a force of law and order which contains some of the people that the UK policing does. And again, not attacking ordinary decent bobbies on the beat, but there's not enough of them. I am attacking the management, the senior ranks, the people at the top, the common purpose drones who are, I think, destroying from within British policing, just like US policing's been destroyed. In the case of the States, yes, there's the racial angle to it because there's a racial tension. We don't have that to quite the same degree in the UK. But if you're going to police force with rapists and murderers in it, you got yourself a problem. So we we, you know what I mean? Don't you agree?
Yeah. 100%. It's just
100%.
I'm laughing, right? And I know I shouldn't laugh and stuff, especially, over the death of somebody. I wasn't laughing over the person who died or the situation, but it's just the audacity of these people, they're woke-a-rai, what they do. It's astonishing, isn't it? It's absolutely.
It is. It's bizarre. I know. Don't feel regrettable, David, about laughing, because is a laughable such a situation. What they're trying to portray this situation to be, it's fucking laughable.
At the moment, right now, I'm in Norwich. I'm doing a training course in Norwich, and I've been walking around over this evening. I went to get something to eat. I was walking around, and I've seen rainbow flags. I've seen Ukrainian flags. I saw socialist flags earlier. Because obviously there was a protest, teachers on strike, but I haven't seen a Union Jack flag anywhere.
I was just about to ask you, David. Have you seen an English or British flag? You've seen every other flag apart from the flag that represents the country we live in, we're born in, and we're probably dying. Isn't that bizarre?
Yeah. And there's loads of socialist flags flying about earlier. The old teachers, Martin Costello's favourite newspaper, The Socialist. But I mean, they're everywhere. So it brings us to our last topic, guys. The strikes. What have you made of the strikes?
Right on the strikes. So this is the public sector holding the private sector to ransom. I look. I understand that inflation is a problem for everybody. I get that. I mean, we have to be reasonable. But is it reasonable for people to be demanding, huge pay increases, which those in the private sector won't get? I just think that these strikes, this is militant trade unionism taking advantage of the situation. This is giving Rishi and the gang an extra push out the door. It's unwarranted. It's unmerited. They don't deserve their increases. I feel like, for example, teachers today on strike. I mean, they have no respect for their profession, or they wouldn't be striking, putting children's education at risk. Absolute disgrace. I totally oppose the strikes, to be honest. Simple as that.
Yeah, I think you're right, actually, talking about the militant unions. As usual, they're all behind it. They've got all the NHS staff striking before. And it's a clear attack, really, to try and overthrow the government. And like you said, it is private sector against public sector. I mean, I would love to have a pay rise working in the private sector, but absolutely no chance of that. And again, it's these kind of people that don't understand where this money comes from. They didn't realise they'd have to start taxing us more to pay for it. And I think you're right to call them an absolute disgrace to their profession. I mean, the kids had it bad. They missed 2 years of their schooling basically for the what. So I think it's an absolute disgrace.
Yes,
They've got their begging bowl out to be asking for more money when our children have suffered enough. And let's face it now, schools are nothing more than indoctrination camps, They've got all the LGBT tags and flags all over the places in there anyway. They don't teach them any proper skills to get through life. They literally programming them. So an absolute disgrace today, I think.
Yeah, no,
Definitely.
Absolutely, Martin. It is a disgrace. The BBC's loving it. They all can't get enough of the strikes, and inconveniencing people who actually go about their work. I mean, I was talking to someone today, and they were saying, this is with regard to the nurses and all of that sector on strike as well, that apparently a lot of these NHS workers are still going into restaurants and canteens and cafes and places like that, demanding that can you get their special NHS discount? Do you remember, which they got during lockdown? So yeah. They've got a nerve on them. I've always argued that the private sector in this country funds the public sector. That's just an economic fact. And if we can't afford it in the private sector, we sure as hell can't afford it in the public sector. They're cosseted, they're pampered, they're indulged. Unfortunately, this government has lacked this mettle to deal with them. Thatcher knew how to deal with them, but that's such a long time ago now. I understand. And, the problem is, unless you confront these unions, then you're going to just get more of it. And frankly, this government's left it way too late. And they don't really mean it anyway. But no, I feel bad for people in the private sector who have had, salaries cut, lost jobs, all of that. They've had to go through that. And these pampered people in the public sector are out with their little trade union produced placards, give us 19% now. When do we want it now? No, Give them nothing. Give them nothing. I know that sounds harsh, but sometimes you got to say harsh things.
That's absolutely true, David. I couldn't believe it. Today I was walking around and I see, the socialist worker being handed around everywhere, and people there with their communist badges on their communist badge pins on their jackets and stuff like that. Straight away lost my support. But anyway, guys, I mean that's all we've got time for now. So we have to wrap that up from there. Just like to say, big massive thank you to David Vance as always for joining us. Top man, really appreciate it.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, listen, can I just thank you so much, guys, for the kind opportunity to come along and speak to you. It's always a pleasure. And as I say, I'm sure we'll speak again. But thanks very much for that.
No doubt, 100%. Thanks again. Thank you, Nick and Martin, all listeners who've been tuning in.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, listeners.